Welcome to Roots and Rishte, a podcast focused on all things South Asian mental health.
We are your co-hosts, two psychologists in the field who are also work besties, wanting to invite you to join us as we speak about patterns and dynamics we see in our clinical work.
We want to have the serious conversations, the topics which are taboo and whispered about, but we also want to celebrate the joys and wins that we experience on a daily basis.
There will be practical applications we hope you can implement in your day-to-day life, which is not like your typical auntie's advice. And just a quick disclaimer, this podcast is for educational purposes only. It does not constitute as a therapeutic relationship or therapeutic advice. Should you want to work with us, please reach out. Welcome to Roots and Rishte podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about bicultural identities and integrating the different facets of our identity. Hi, Simrat.
Hi, Ambreen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm excited for today's topic. Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, it's one that's so prevalent. It's prevalent in our personal life. Mm-hmm. It's prevalent in our clinical work. It's something that we see a lot. And so bicultural identity. So we're kind of talking about, the challenges of navigating between two different cultures. Mm. And this can be more prominent when, you are second born or second generation to a country and your parents have immigrated on their own. And now you're kind of trying to navigate sort of the cultural roots with this new sort of world that you are also very much a part of.
And it's like this concept, right? Like we hear this a lot, right? Mm-hmm. I'm too brown for this, but I'm too westernized for this, right? Yes. Like it's kind of this piece where we kind of find ourselves at conflict with our identities all the time, whether it's religious, cultural, whatever it is, right? But it's like I'm too much of this or I'm too much of this, but I'm never right in the middle or exactly where I need to be.
Yeah. And I think it can also happen like within a realm as well, right? Like I think sometimes the challenge can be like cultural versus religion, for example, right? Where it's still kind of in like the South Asian sort of like experience, but they're two different experiences. And like maybe when a little bit later when we get into our personal sort of experiences with navigating our identity, that can be a little bit more
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's also about like this piece when we're talking about the cultural identities, it's really more about learning to integrate them and not so much about the assimilation of them, right? Yeah. Like we're not trying to make two become one.
Yeah.
We're actually trying to integrate two parts of a whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not, and this might be once again the difference between American and Canadian expectations. But in America, I don't know how relevant this still is, so I don't want to make assumptions. But there is that melting pot idea, right? And that is the idea that like everybody kind of like melts into this one. Versus the acculturation, which is, I think, more of the integration that you're talking about. So the sort of like, how can you have both of them sort of in at the same time?
And I think, like our personal experiences are so relevant here, right? Like I was born and raised in California. I did not grow up necessarily in a community that was primarily Southeast Asian. We had a very particular area in Southern California, Artesia, that was that street of like the hub of Southeast Asia, right? And then I think in middle school, my parents actually moved to a city in Cerritos, a city in California called Cerritos, right? Because they wanted me to have more of that like bicultural experience and more of like people that were similar to me, there. And it was such an interesting experience, right? Like, I think I have these memories of growing up and like, I was 8 years old and I had mehndi on my hands because I went to a wedding and then having to like go to school in a environment that wasn't aware of my cultural identity at that point. And, like they just, it wasn't an active part of awareness there, right?
Yeah. You probably had no idea what mehndi even was.
Yeah, I had no idea what mehndi was.
Or like you're drying on your hands at night.
and I remember one of the providers told me that it's going to give me a disease. I was 8 years old, 8 years old, right? And so I remember in my 8-year-old head going, she doesn't know what she's talking about.
Yeah.
It's not my job to educate her. And I just let it be. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever, right?
Yeah. And I'm so glad that was sort of your response to that, because another response could have been, oh my God, what is this? Like, this is gross. This is going to give me a disease. Yeah. I don't want anything to do with this.
Right.
And that starts to sort of take away from
wanting to partake in the cultural experiences, right? Because now it's like, okay, but if I integrate my cultural experiences, that means that I cannot be accepted here in the school setting, in this world or whatever, right? But then if I reject my cultural identity to fit in here, I still don't belong where I'm spending a lot of my time. Right?
How do you think you navigated that? Or like looking back on it now, how do you feel like you kind of navigated that?
I think for me, like it was a lot of it was like, I knew what I was doing. I knew this cultural thing, right? And I remember I used to have this like experience because I grew up with a lot of Bollywood movies. I grew up with a lot of Bollywood songs. I grew up loving the clothes, the outfits, all of those things, right? Like it's still such an interest of mine even today, right? And I remember I would go to myself, I'd be like, you know, like everyone's talking about this like Western movie that's come out. And I'm just going, yeah, but did you know about this Bollywood movie that just came out that like had these like amazing song and dances? Like this, like honestly, Western movies were so boring to me, unless they were like Disney. But Disney does it like Bollywood because they have the song and dance numbers, right? But like Western movies were so boring because of that, right? But I also, my parents were so involved within the religious community, so I had that balance, right? Because every Friday, Saturday, I was participating in my religious events, right? Whether I was going to go pray or whether I was going to go to religious school, right? So I always kind of had that hub and that connection, and I fit in there because everyone else was going through the exact same thing I was, trying to figure out this like navigation of cultural identity versus, you know, outside identity. Right?
And you touch on something really important, which is like home can be such an anchor for part of those identities, right? And so when you're kind of living out in the world and maybe some of the cultural elements aren't as common or they're just not happening, when you go home, like, I don't know, you're still eating dal and roti for dinner. Do you know what I mean? Like you're drinking chai, you're not drinking your like, like you have those things at home that can be really anchoring.
And I think about this too, right? Like when we think about it from the angle of like even food, right? Like in the Western world, it is totally okay to bring sandwiches on a plane ride or like a car ride, and it's okay to prepare those sandwiches, okay? Sorry, my parents were preparing a patila of like pulao, okay? And this is what we used to take on vacation, right? And so like having to now, you know, like share that with somebody that didn't get that, like you just learned, okay, I just don't share certain parts of myself here, and I just don't share certain parts of myself here. And so you learn from a very young age that you have two separate identities.
We would have rote rolled up in tin foil, sometimes with a jar stuck in it too. So, So for me personally, I was born in Edmonton, but I grew up in London, Ontario, which is a predominantly Caucasian community. And it's interesting because when I look back on it now, I don't know if maybe we were just in a very, like the people we were around were very accepting and non-judgmental. Maybe I was naive and ignorant and I didn't notice some of the signs around me if anybody did have any sort of like thoughts or opinions about sort of me as an Indian. But it wasn't a huge thing for me. So, like, I remember in school, I switched schools in grade 2, and the only comment I ever remember happening in school was on my first day when we stood up for O Canada. This one kid goes to me, "We're not allowed to wear hats during O Canada." And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm not wearing a hat. This is a turban." Like, that was my response. And then there was nothing else beyond that. Mm-hmm. But what happened with me growing up there is the cultural part of my identity was very much kind of put to the side. Mm-hmm. And talking about home being an anchor. So at home, religion was prominent. So over our holidays, we'd go to this religion camp, and at home, it was very much religion focused. And there is a difference between kind of the Punjabi culture and sort of like the Sikh religion and being Amritari and baptized and all of that. And so when I actually think about navigating bicultural identity, I actually think about exactly that. Like, you don't really belong here, but you also really don't belong there, right? So I'm in Brampton now, and those things like Bollywood that you're talking about, or even like, you know, like Gidda or different songs, or like all like the cultural parts, they're just not part of who I am. Right? Like, I grew up with like the Backstreet Boys and 98 Degrees and NSYNC. Like that was my jam, right? Like it was not like Bollywood music or even Bollywood like movies. First Bollywood movie I think I saw, just like as a total side note, I was probably like 16. I was with my best friends in Montreal. Shout out to Jess and Dolls. And it was Kabhi Khushi Kabhie Gham, and I literally cried. It's like a 3.5 hour movie. I literally cried starting at like 30 minutes in for the entire movie. But yeah, that's just a total side note. But it wasn't part of what I grew up with. And I think I feel that now. And I feel that when we're at like just like different sort of like when cultural elements are more prominent than religious elements. So I'm much more comfortable at a gurdwara, for example, than I would be at a like wedding function where like it is more about sort of like the cultural excitement or celebration.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I also think that there's so many different like conflicting values that come up, right? Like just kind of even talking about this experience that you brought up, right? Like I had a lot of the cultural experiences and some like and religious experiences, right? But like I struggled to integrate in like the outside community of sorts, right? And here you are talking about like you had the religious identity, but then the struggle to kind of like work with the cultural identity, right? And like there's so many conflicting values and messages that we get around like biculturalism, right? Like, you know, there's expectations that our families have. There is like expectations about how we should function in the world and things like that. But there's not actually a common definition of like what is the bicultural identity, right? And like kind of coming to this piece of like, is it the religious integration with the cultural integration? Is it the bicultural integration with like the outside community, right? Like there's so many aspects of this that are conflicting, but then the commonalities that we find in the conflicts are the guilt, the shame, the struggles to kind of integrate the two.
Yeah, and family dynamics matter as well, right? And so if you're in a household where parents are maybe very strict or very kind of like they keep the cultural very close, then that can be really difficult, right? So when you're trying to like spread your wings, so to speak, or try to do something that even just your other friends are doing, right? Like going to the mall for some, like I like sometimes that can be a huge challenge, right? It's like, hey, like I'm 15, I'm gonna go to the mall with my friends. It's like, oh no, you're not, right? Or like, oh, we'll take you there and we'll be at the other store, but like you go do your thing and then we'll come. And so sometimes I think that matters as well, right? It's kind of the openness of the family unit as well to sort of this idea of integration. And if it's not open or if it's not kind of something that's accepted, that can be a huge challenge to navigate.
And, you know, these are challenges that start from such a young age for us, right? But I think really come to head when we start to experience like even the bigger phases of our life, right? Like choosing a romantic partner, right? Choosing a career. It's also about like how we dress, the choices that we make, the friendships that we decide to maintain and keep and all of that, right? Like there was such a strong emphasis for us to also make friends within the community, right? And all of those things. And like to this day, like I have, my friendships are very strong, right? But there's also this like intentionality that I now have to take to maintain my friendships outside of the community as well, right?
Yeah, and the challenge, like for some of the examples that you're using, is that like these are just like natural sort of evolutions of life, right? Like as you become a teenager, like friends become more important to a teenager's life, or that sense of autonomy and really wanting to like kind of test your independence and test your boundaries. And if you're not sort of given the opportunity to do that, or like dress how you want, or make choices the way that you want to, that can be like, I think the implications of that can be mental health related. Like, I think that's like, you know, some people can experience a sense of depression or anxiety or just a lot of dysregulation based on that isolation, even.
And I think, you know, like this bicultural piece goes back so many generations too, right? Like, because I'm also thinking about the fact that like, it's not that our parents or the influences we had were coming from a bad place. But they're coming from a place of like, this is what we knew. This is what we know brings us safety, brings us feelings of being safe, right? But it is in direct conflict of what we feel safe with. Right?
Yeah. And maybe there's also the fear of things getting lost over the years, right? And so it's like we came to these different countries for the opportunities or because other family were here and this seemed like the right thing to do. But the fear of losing those roots may also kind of be what drives this is what needs to happen, or this is the way we do it. This is how we do things as opposed to how the other do things.
And even like within the culture, right? Like, like your family did it much different, but my family did it much different, right? Like we don't even have the same experiences, but we had a lot of the same expectations, outcomes, things like that, right?
Yeah. So I guess one of the things when we're talking about bicultural identity is that, how do you balance the weight of the expectations versus your own personal desires? And a lot of times what can happen is if your personal desire gets lost in those expectations, you start to live a life that just doesn't feel aligned to the life you want to be living. It feels inauthentic. It might feel stifling. It might feel, once again, isolating. Like there's a lot of implications if there is a huge conflict between the two.
And I think we can even touch upon the career piece. I know we're going to go into this a little bit deeper on another episode, right? But I think this is so important too, right? Because when you are picking a career and it doesn't align with the values of your family or what the expectations are of your family, right? We also are having to kind of balance this aspect of like, it's part of this is your life, your satisfaction. You are working the job, not your family, right? So having to now navigate between what's actually going to make you satisfied and how to then balance the act of that, right? Like sometimes I kind of think about it from the aspect of like, if you are satisfied and if you are doing things that are aligned with you, do you now have the time, space, and energy to manage and deal with the weight of the expectations or the lack of following through on those expectations with your family?
Yeah.
Right?
As opposed to if you're kind of burdened down with the version of the life they want or other people expect you to live.
Yeah. And it becomes such a tug of war. Right? Like it becomes such a tug of war because we're constantly in this, and every situation requires a different level of it, right? Like it could be now it's your friends and it's your job, then it's your romantic partner, right? Like there's so many aspects of this that you're kind of battling the aspect of like satisfying the collective, but also satisfying yourself. Right? Like it doesn't actually have to be a sacrifice. And I think this is the other piece, like, dialectical behavioral therapy talks about this. And it's the idea that two things can be true at the same time. Right? And so this is really important to kind of recognize and sit with it in terms of a bicultural identity. We're not actually trying to be exclusive. We're not trying to actually separate the two. We're trying to
it's not secular, right?
Yes. We're trying to allow two things to exist at the same time because both are allowed.
Yeah. And maybe part of that is even kind of the negotiating, right? And so like the idea of like going to school outside of your geographical area or where your parents live, like that is something that a lot of people navigate as well in terms of like, like this is where I want to go to school. Can I go to school? And a lot of times there can be a lot of resistance. And so kind of negotiating even kind of how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've shared this with you before too, right? Like I'm the oldest daughter of like one of two sisters, right? So sorry, I have two sisters. There's two of us. Sorry, there's two of us, right? I'm the oldest sister.
Got it.
Right? And I think the hardest part is that I wanted to maybe apply for schools and study abroad programs and things like that. But it was not something that was accepted and okayed, right? So it was something that I had to then be okay with going to a university that was close by to my home versus exploring the world outside of me. And then really coming to university and that coming to head because I'm exploring this identity, this social creature that I am. And this was not okay, right? Like, and so just having to kind of now negotiate and stuff, like my parents now can be like, oh yeah, that's just Ambreen. Like she's friends everywhere, right? But then when I was growing up, that was a real cultural clash for me, right? That I was not wanting to conform to like the societal expectations of being more demure.
Yeah. You had to break through those expectations, right? Yeah. My dad promised me a car if I went to York or if I stayed closer to home. He followed through. I got a minivan. I don't know if that's what I had in mind. But kind of going back to what you're saying about living a life that's more aligned, I think sometimes when that comes to head, difficult decisions get made, right? And sometimes what we have to do is we have to make these difficult decisions and hope that the other people can kind of come around. And so after I graduated from my master's, I was looking for a job here for like 6 months or something, couldn't find anything. And then I ended up applying for a job in Burns Lake, British Columbia, which is like northern British Columbia, closer to Alaska than to Vancouver, kind of just to give you a perspective. And I didn't ask my parents. I told my parents because I think I knew at that point I was at that crossroads of I need a change and I need to expand my world and I'm the one that needs to make it happen.
Yeah.
And so I like literally told my parents, I was like, by the way, I have an interview next week in British Columbia, and if I get the job, I might not come back. And it was hard. It was hard for them, but to their credit, they let me go, right? There wasn't like, there was resistance, but there wasn't a forbidden, you're not allowed to go. They let me go. And that actually expanded my world even further. And Burns Lake led me to California and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But exactly that. Sometimes we come to this crossroads where we have to sort of like decide, is this something that I can do? And then like for me, I said, like, is this dangerous? Does this go against my values? Is this something I feel like I shouldn't be doing? None of that. This was something that I thought was for my personal growth. It was an experience I wanted to have. It felt very much aligned to my values. I mean, I ended up back here after I got married. So like I feel like that full circle ended up happening regardless. But yeah, going back to that idea of living aligned and how can we do that?
And I do think that the first time that we do something, it's so hard. It's so hard, right? Like I couldn't explore the world in the way that I wanted to, with the freedom that I wanted to, when I was a university student or when I was in my doctorate program or master's program and all of those things, right? But then I think what I did was really just kind of took life by with both hands, and I just kind of when it was time for me to make decisions about a career, right? Like this is the longest I've been in my longest I've stayed in one place. Like I've been in private practice now 5 years, right? 6 years. Sorry, this is 6 years, right? And I've always only stayed at a job like a year and a half, whatever it is, because at that point, it was more about exploring my individuality than it was anything else, right? So I lived in San Diego, I lived in Austin, I lived in the Bay Area, right? And so those were things that really were so fulfilling for me, but were so hard for me to get to because of the crossroads that we were at, right? Like it was just like a recognition of like, older daughter and girls don't do this, right? As culturally, don't go out and seek a world like this, right? But me recognizing that I've outgrown the box that I was in.
And once again, the implications of that box, right? Like if you're starting to feel like your world is getting too small, or you're feeling depressed or anxious or that, right? And I mean, we're talking about kind of breaking through some of these like expectations or these crossroads that are like passing through the crossroads, but like it does come with a heaviness, right? Like there can be a sense of guilt or letting people down or shame, or like it's not something that it was just like, wasn't literally like, peace out, I'm going to Burns Lake and I didn't feel anything. Like I had to sort of navigate what that felt like for myself and sort of reconcile that for myself.
And can we just sit with for a second, like Burns Lake, didn't you not see sun for like
a full month. A full month.
Yeah. Like that was like, think about that. Like we get to a point where it's like not seeing the sun was more acceptable than staying where we're at. Like, let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about what that's about, though, right? Like it's this like conflict that we have around like our parents' fear that we're losing our roots, right? And our fear of losing ourselves.
Right. Well said. Yeah. Or not even having the opportunity to find ourselves. Right.
And like let's talk about that too, right? Like there's a deep component to this. There's a deep multi-generational trauma to this, right? Like our parents came to these countries for survival, for a better life, right? And kudos to them, hats off to them. Like they provided that. A lot of them, like, we're lucky in the sense that, I know our families, we've had our moments with them, we've had our challenges with them, but they've like pulled through and provided those better opportunities for us, right? But at the same time, right, they came from a place of survival and having to do this from a place of survival, not from a place of we have the freedom to explore our identity. For us, because we're not coming from the same place of survival, we now have that freedom to explore our identity.
Yeah. We have the privilege of self-actualization. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What is it? The hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like we can actually talk about self-actualization.
Yeah.
A lot of our parents are only now, after we have like left the house, can suddenly be like, well, what am I interested in?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
My mom joined a book club.
Amazing. Amazing.
And I was like, you've never read a single book in your entire life. Whereas for me, I'm like reading constantly, right?
Yeah. But maybe this is part of like the reciprocal energy that happens in relationships as well, right? Like maybe your mom has seen how much joy reading brings to you and how much it expands your world. And it was something that she was like, oh, hey, well, Ambreen loves it. Like, let me pick up a book and see what it's all about, right? Like, because now she has the ability, the time, the capacity, the opportunity to do
like
that.
she can actually work on self-actualization now, right? And it's not survival of like, I need to put her through school. I need to get food on the table or any of those things, right?
Yeah. But what a positive that she's able to do that, because I think a lot of people in that generation, even if the time and ability sort of opens up for it, they're still not able to get to that because the survival mode is just the default. And so it's almost like they don't have sort of they don't allow themselves the opportunity, or they don't know how, or they don't think it's worthwhile, or whatever the reason may be. Yeah.
So let's talk about why the bicultural identity is so important, right? And why it can actually be very positive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there are things that when we can embrace a bicultural identity, actually our skill sets grow. Our ability to cope actually grows. Like we have noticed that what bicultural identity brings is that you have more empathy, you have more resilience, right? You're more adaptable to different surrounding, different situations, right? There may not be an answer to like how you navigate your life, right? Whether you navigate separately or like kind of integrating the two. But there's this piece about like, it's not actually about the outside world. It's about the internal integration, right?
And that can look so different for different people, right? So even like siblings in the same family can have a different meaning of what that integration looks like for them, or friends in the same friend group can have a different meaning of what that looks like, but it can still be one that can be positive and fulfilling.
And it's really about this concept of like not looking at it as separate parts, but integrating it as a whole, right? Like it's our integrative experiences. And it's not the separate pieces. Like we're not separate people. We are integrative people. We can still participate in the world, right? And still honor the identities we have in the different aspects of our world. So what is the Not Your Auntie's advice here?
I think it's that idea that you don't have to choose between the two identities, right? Going back to the integration piece, or trying to figure out what your version of blending those identities are. And also recognizing that there is a way that you can live more aligned to your values while sort of navigating some of those cultural expectations. And maybe you'll need support to be able to do that. It can help to have somebody to talk to, but it can also help to be surrounded or around people who have, already sort of done that, trailblazed it kind of, and, kind of following their footsteps, seeing what they did. I think it's becoming more prominent sort of in our world. So I don't know, like if you're familiar with Saj Kohli, but Brown Girl Therapy on Instagram. She's written a book about identity. She talks so much about just kind of navigating identity, bicultural identity, interracial relationships, marriages, and all of that. And so I think it's becoming a conversation, and it's not, once again, so taboo, and it's not something that you kind of whisper about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's so much happening in the space, right?
So
much like experience sharing, so much research, so much just, normalization of the experiences that we're going through, right? So it's just recognizing that you can be both. You don't have to be separate. They don't have to feel separate. And it doesn't actually have to look together in the world. It just has to feel together in here.
Yeah. And we say that with the understanding that there is a spectrum of family dynamics, right? So there might be some parents who are more open and accepting, and families that are more open and accepting. There might be families who are very closed and very sort of set in their ways. And so to find your version of yourself, and that can be a little bit more challenging. So we do say that with an understanding of that spectrum, but we also say it with hope for anybody who feels like they're stuck or they're struggling.
Absolutely. Right. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.